Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Reality Check.
And then I just put my feet on the street. It's like, who do you want to be? Only what I want to be.
In this series, we're hearing the stories of people who left stable positions in order to pursue opportunities they felt would be more personally fulfilling or impactful in their communities. In this episode, we'll be hearing from an entrepreneur named Sarah. Sarah is the co-founder of Fiddlehead Coffee Shop, a hub for specialty coffee and community engagement, with emphasis on farmer-friendly practices. Although she had a dream of running a coffee shop from a young age, Sarah spent most of her life working in the financial industry. When she realized she did not have a burning passion for retirement packages, she left that field to pursue marketing. Eventually, she left her position in marketing to run Fiddlehead Coffee full-time. With a degree in philosophy and an MBA, Sarah's multifaceted background lends itself to her wide skill set. It's fitting for her current position, where one minute she's strategizing long-term marketing goals for Fiddlehead, and the next she's washing dishes. In fact, right after our interview ended, it was on Memorial Day, Sarah was getting ready to close up the shop, and several customers started a conversation with her asking for her advice on how to open their own coffee shop in the area. A large part of what motivates Sarah, especially in those 80-hour work weeks, is her commitment to improving and engaging with the Rochester community. She wants to create an environment where patients who are visiting for Mayo Clinic, all the way from overseas, can have a conversation and sit down, have a nice cup of coffee with lifelong members of the Rochester community. As you'll see in the conversation, it's much more than just coffee for Sarah. This is a community venture. Something that's been echoed in previous interviews in this series is this idea that the entrepreneur often has the idea for his or her business when they're younger, but continually talk themselves out of it in lieu of more stable positions.
Each step of the way, normal life course, I personally would go, I just wish I'd have done this. If I'd have just made the decision to do this back when I was really thinking about it, I'd be done now. I'd be there, I'd be doing that.
So Sarah certainly did this. She always dreamt of opening a coffee shop, but she felt that this dream was not really feasible, that it wasn't rational.
I always did want to start something, and I always, coffee shop had come up many times, but it always seemed kind of silly for some reason. I felt like coffee shop was kind of like a silly dream, not a real thing.
When Sarah moved to Rochester, she decided it was time to open up her own business. She began networking, reaching out to small business owners in the area that she admired to get their advice on starting entrepreneurial ventures in Rochester. One of the people she reached out to was a woman named Annie, who owned a restaurant and brewery named Forager. And by the end of her conversation with Annie, Sarah had an opportunity to open up her own shop in the retail space of Forager. At the time, Sarah was interested in pursuing an urban homesteading type shop.
She's like, yeah, totally. Why don't you take over the retail space? I was like, okay. And it was kind of one of those moments crap, now I have to do it. I was like, what? You're an idiot. What are these stupid ideas? Always biting off more than I can chew. And
eventually, Sarah's brother-in-law brought his years of experience in the coffee industry and spearheaded the coffee part of the operation, joining her in this new venture. Just like that, Fiddlehead was born.
It's like a baby. We take care of it, we talk to it, we say goodnight to it at the end of the night. It's part of you, and I think that's probably, it's true for a lot of small business owners. There's not as much, and that can be hard too. There's not a definitive, this is my job, this is my personal life. The lines are all blurred and messy and crossed.
In Fiddlehead's early days, Sarah was still working her job as the marketing director at the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. There came a point where working both jobs was just not feasible. Sarah describes how she realized she reached that point.
Small business ownership is an all-the-time job, and I just couldn't. I was physically not doing well with the amount of work and stress that my body was just telling me it was time to stop. I I couldn't function properly with the imbalance I had put myself in with how many hours I was working in.
But moving to Fiddlehead full-time was certainly not a decrease in workload for Sarah. If anything, she works harder at this job than she ever has. When I asked Sarah about the major challenges she's encountered along this journey, she brought up some very similar points to our previous interview in this series, Amanda Leitner, and most of those are related to funding.
So our biggest thing here is, I wouldn't even say getting started, but once you get going, there's not very much access to money, to funds. And our startup communities are pretty new as compared to other places. Especially in Rochester, we're still understanding how to deal with risk and uncertainty.
Getting financial support has, we started with literally nothing. And went around to every bank, and the only way that you can, if you don't already have collateral in a business or a bunch of cash sitting somewhere, you just need to find someone privately who can finance your operation. We could have had that up front and been able to capitalize on some of that stuff up front, we would be much better off and be much more successful. A very linear thing, 1 + 1 = 2, and 1 - 1 = 0.
Our conversation that struck me the most was when Sarah explained how even when she's putting in the longest hours she has her entire life in any position working at Fiddlehead, it feels easy to her. She enjoys it so much that work is worthwhile. And I think that's kind of the goal for most people, is getting to a point where even if you're working 80 hours a week, that work doesn't feel like work.
70 hours here is infinitely easier than 40 hours when you don't like what you're doing or you don't feel a commitment to it. And that's something I didn't expect. I work harder here than I've ever worked, and I've had some pretty demanding jobs in the past, and it's effortless.
Sarah describes some of her favorite aspects of working at Fiddlehead, most of which are related to community development and growth.
Being able to cultivate a local economy is really important to us, and being being a small business that people can really call home and identify with and feel, feel community here. We have a unique opportunity to educate and bring people together, and my favorite thing about the shop is I get to know someone really well, I get to know another person really well, and then they're both there at the same time, and I'm Phil, meet Emma. And then magic happens. We want to be the heart, a beating heart of Rochester. Come and get your, your lifeline here. Get caffeinated, but also meet, be able to just build a community here. It's very hard, I feel with how transient the community is, to really hone in on who we are as, what our cultural identity is here outside of the clinic. And at the same time, I really value the weirdness of this community. We get to be a second home for people who are going through the hardest things they'll ever go through. More than once someone has come in after finding out they have something, terminal, or they're here because their kids are getting, treatment. And that's, we take it very seriously, the responsibility to care for them while they're here and create a place that is a respite in that time. So
on June 23rd, a local Rochester mosque was attacked, bacon being left on the doors and outside of the mosque. The Fiddlehead crew was shocked this wasn't broadcast on the local news, and they decided to organize a peaceful gathering to demonstrate that all are welcome in the Rochester community. They worked tirelessly overnight to prepare food and coffee for those who attended the gathering. This is just one demonstration of how committed they are to growing and improving the Rochester community. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Reality Check. Take a peek at the 2 previous features in the series below. And I'm very excited about our upcoming release in this series, and it's going to require a lot of coffee. You might need Sarah's help for this. I'm going to be following around a local entrepreneur for an entire day, and he works hard, just as all these people do. We're going to be looking at his schedule from the wee hours of the morning all the way into the night and following him every single step and filming every step along the way.
I'm kicking hieroglyphics like Egyptians, cause I'm a nihilist like the Nile is. Get it? Open my eyelids to all these Pontius Pilates who might be stylish but they blind in compliance. Why?
There'll be more on that coming soon. But in the meantime, thank you very much to Sarah for sharing her story. You can check out more about Fiddlehead Coffee Shop, which is actually moving to a new location in Rochester. I'll have links to how to support their work in the description below. So that's all for now. I'll speak to you soon.
I'm high as I could feasibly be. I'll be feeding the beats, chilling with the roots and eating the beat. And then I just put my feet on the street. It's like, who do you want to be?